The blood-red dust swirled around Abigail Sutton as she stared down the barrel of Wade Kincaid's rifle, her heart racing not from fear, but from fury. She'd spent 4 months defending her father's homestead single-handedly, and now this broad-shouldered stranger with calculating blue eyes and a weathered Stetson had the audacity to claim her water rights belonged to the K-Bar Ranch. "Lower that weapon, Mr. Kincaid, or the next person riding through Silverdale will find your body pecked clean by vultures," Abigail warned, her own shotgun steady despite the tremble in her limbs from exhaustion. Wade's eyes narrowed, taking in the woman's sun-darkened face, the determined set of her jaw, and the way she gripped the shotgun like it was an extension of herself. He'd heard rumors about Jeremiah Sutton's daughter, how she'd stayed on after her father's death, refusing to sell to the railroad men or cattle barons circling like wolves. "Miss Sutton," he said finally, lowering his rifle but not holstering it, "that creek runs through K-Bar land before it reaches yours. Your father knew that." "My father knew a great many things," she replied coldly, "including that your family has been trying to swallow up every small homestead from here to the Arizona territory. This land is mine, fair and legal." The Montana summer sun beat down mercilessly as they faced each other across the disputed creek. Wade had not expected such fierce opposition from the slip of a woman who'd inherited Sutton's troublesome parcel. The land itself wasn't worth much, but the water in 1878, water meant everything. "The drought's hitting everyone hard," Wade said, his voice softening slightly. "K-Bar's got 300 head of cattle that need water. Your little garden plot doesn't. My little garden plot feeds me and 3 neighboring families," Abigail cut in. "And this creek has enough water for both of us if you'd stop damming it upstream." Something in her words gave Wade pause. He'd assumed she was holding out for a better offer, like most. But there was something else in her stance: pride, yes, but also responsibility. He recognized it because he carried the same burden for his ranch hands and their families. "I didn't dam any creek, Miss Sutton." The statement hung between them, unexpected enough that Abigail's shotgun barrel dipped slightly. "Someone did. 3 days ago." The flow slowed to a trickle. Wade frowned. "That would be above my northern boundary. Blackwater Mining Company has been buying up there." "Blackwater," Abigail spat the name. "They offered to buy my father out before he died. When he refused, accidents started happening." Wade's jaw tightened. He'd had his own run-ins with Blackwater's methods. Their foreman, Silas Thornton, was rumored to employ men who were more comfortable with a gun than mining tools. "Show me where the water's been cut," he said finally, slipping his rifle back into its saddle holster. Abigail hesitated, sizing him up. At 30, Wade Kincaid had the reputation of a hard but fair man. His ranch hands were loyal, and unlike other cattle operations, K-Bar had never been implicated in the range wars that occasionally erupted. "Why would you help me?" "I'm not," he replied bluntly. "I'm helping my cattle. If Blackwater's damming the creek, they're stealing my water too." It wasn't an alliance, but it was something. Abigail nodded curtly, lowered her shotgun, and whistled for her paint mare. The ride to the northern boundary took them through rugged terrain that challenged even Wade's expert horsemanship. He watched, impressed despite himself, as Abigail navigated her mare through rocky passages and steep inclines with the ease of someone born to the saddle. "Your father taught you to ride," he observed as they paused to water their horses at a small spring. "And shoot, and mend fences, and birth calves," she answered, a hint of pride coloring her voice. "He had no sons, so he taught his daughter everything he knew." Wade nodded. "I remember him. Tough old coot. Came to a cattlemen's meeting once and told Thornton he'd shoot any man who set foot on his property without permission." A ghost of a smile touched Abigail's lips. "That sounds like Pa. Is that why you stayed?" "To honor his memory." The smile vanished. "I stayed because this is my home. The only one I've ever known." They rode in silence after that, the vast Montana sky stretching endlessly above them. By mid-afternoon, they reached a narrow gorge where the creek should have been flowing strongly. Instead, a massive pile of boulders and timber created an artificial dam, diverting water into a newly dug channel that led toward Blackwater's mining operations. "Blasted it," Wade muttered, dismounting to examine the handiwork. This took more than a few men to accomplish. Abigail slid from her saddle, approaching the dam with growing anger. They're stealing water from everyone downstream. The Hendersons, the Wilkinsons, my farm, all of us. And K-Bar, Wade added grimly. This isn't legal. They can purchase water rights, but they can't just take them. And who's going to stop them? Sheriff Daniels. Abigail scoffed. He's in Thornton's pocket, same as the judge. Wade studied the dam, calculating. It would take dynamite to clear this. Or 20 men working for a week. I don't have either. I have both. The words came out before Wade had fully considered them. When Abigail turned to him with surprise, he shrugged. Like I said, my cattle need water too. That night, they camped near the dam, the stars emerging in brilliant clusters above them. Wade built a small fire, and they shared the jerky and hardtack he carried in his saddlebags. Why hasn't Kincaid Ranch been sold to Blackwater? Abigail asked as the fire crackled between them. They seemed to be buying everything else. Wade stared into the flames. They've tried. Offered a fair price too. But K-Bar isn't just land to me. My grandfather built it from nothing after the war. My father expanded it during the cattle boom. Now it's mine to protect. And your family? Wife? Children? He shook his head. Never found the time. Or the right woman. There was a challenge in her voice that made him look up. Ranching doesn't leave much room for courting, Miss Sutton. She nodded, understanding in her eyes. For proposals, she said suddenly. Pardon. Since my father died, I've had 4 marriage proposals. All from men who suddenly discovered my charms right after they learned I owned land with water rights. Wade couldn't help but smile. And you turned them all down flat, I imagine. The last one I actually considered, she admitted. Thomas Wilkinson, neighbor to the east. Good man, works hard. But when he proposed, she trailed off. What? Abigail met his gaze across the fire, something vulnerable briefly visible beneath her tough exterior. I told him his proposal felt like mercy, like he was rescuing the poor Sutton girl who couldn't manage on her own. Wade studied her, seeing not weakness but a fierce independence that reminded him of the wild mustangs that sometimes passed through his northern pastures, beautiful, untamed, and defiant. What did he say to that? He asked quietly. He said I was being foolish, that a woman needs a husband out here. She poked at the fire with a stick. Maybe he was right. No, Wade said with unexpected firmness. A person needs their dignity. Man or woman. Their eyes met again, and something shifted between them, a recognition, perhaps, of kindred spirits. Dawn broke with Wade already awake, planning their approach. 2 of his ranch hands arrived an hour later, bringing dynamite, tools, and extra horses. Mr. Kincaid, one of them said, eyeing Abigail suspiciously. Thornton's got hired guns patrolling these parts. Word is they shot a homesteader last week for trespassing on what used to be his own property. Then we'll need to work fast, Mac, Wade replied, checking the dynamite. And keep your rifles handy. The explosion echoed through the hills around noon, sending water surging through the newly cleared channel. Wade and his men worked quickly to ensure the flow returned to its natural course, while Abigail kept watch from a high point, rifle at the ready. They were nearly finished when she whistled sharply, 3 riders approaching fast from the direction of the mining camp. Thornton's men, Wade muttered, grabbing his rifle. Mac, finish up here. Anderson, get the horses ready. He joined Abigail at her vantage point as the riders drew closer. We've restored the water, but they won't like us interfering. Let them try something, Abigail said, her finger resting near the trigger. The lead rider pulled up 20 yards away, a tall man with a scar bisecting his left cheek. Kincaid, this is Blackwater property now. This is a public waterway, Carson, Wade called back. Your boss knows he can't dam it without approval from territorial authorities. Carson spat. We got all the approval we need. Now clear out before this gets messy. Wade stood his ground. The water flows as nature intended now. You try damming it again, and you'll answer to more than just me. The Cattlemen's Association won't stand for Blackwater stealing water rights. And who's going to tell them? You. Carson's eyes shifted to Abigail. Or Sutton's daughter. Heard you're still playing at ranching, girl. Shame about your father. Accidents happen so easily out here. Abigail's rifle came up so fast that Carson's hand jerked toward his holster. Wasn't an accident, she said coldly. And if you're threatening me, you should know I don't miss at this distance. The tension crackled between them until Wade stepped forward. 3 against 4, Carson. Bad odds, especially when 2 of us are up here with high ground. Take a message to Thornton. K-Bar Ranch stands with Sutton land on this. Dam the creek again, and we'll do more than blow it up. Carson's eyes narrowed, calculating. Finally, he jerked his head at his companions. This ain't over, Kincaid. Not by a long shot. They watched the riders retreat, and only when they disappeared from view did Abigail lower her rifle. Sutton Land thanks K-Bar Ranch for its assistance, she said formally, but her eyes held genuine gratitude. Wade nodded. We should get back. They might return with more men. The ride back was tense, all of them watching for pursuit. By the time they reached the boundary between K-Bar and Sutton Land, the sun was setting, painting the mountains in gold and crimson. You shouldn't stay alone tonight, Wade said as they paused at the property line. Thornton's not the type to forgive an insult. Abigail straightened in her saddle. I've been alone for months. And now you've made enemies of men who don't hesitate to kill. She hesitated, pride warring with practicality. I have a shotgun and good locks. They have numbers and no conscience. Wade met her gaze directly. I'm not offering charity, Miss Sutton. I'm offering alliance. Neighbors watching out for each other. She studied him for a long moment. One night, she conceded finally. I'll stay at K-Bar, but I return to my land tomorrow. The K-Bar Ranch house was larger than Abigail had expected, a solidly built 2-story structure with a wide porch and actual glass windows. Ranch hands nodded respectfully as Wade led her inside, where a housekeeper named Mrs. Forrester showed her to a guest room with a real feather bed. Dinner was a surprisingly civilized affair, with proper china and conversation that ranged from cattle prices to territorial politics. Abigail found herself relaxing despite her determination to remain aloof. Wade Kincaid in his own home was different from the hard-eyed rancher she'd met at the creek still reserved, but with flashes of dry humor and unexpected kindness. Why did you really help me? She asked as they sat on the porch after dinner, watching nightfall blanket the land. It wasn't just about your water rights. Wade was silent for so long she thought he might not answer. When I first came home from the war, I was different. Harder. Saw everything as a battle to be won. He stared out at the darkening ranch. My father told me something I didn't understand then. He said that in the West, we survive by helping each other. That a man alone is just waiting to die. And a woman alone. His eyes found hers in the gathering twilight. I've known few women with your courage, Miss Sutton. But courage doesn't make you bulletproof. So it was pity. Respect, he corrected firmly. And self-interest. The more small ranchers Blackwater drives out, the stronger they become. Eventually, they'll come for K-Bar too. She nodded slowly. So we stand together. Against Blackwater, yes. The night passed peacefully, but morning brought news that changed everything. One of Wade's hands rode in at dawn, his horse lathered from hard riding. Mr. Kincaid. Fire at the Sutton place. Thornton's men, at least 6 of them, rode in before first light. Abigail was already running for her horse before Wade could react. He caught up with her at the stable. Wait. We need men. A plan. That's my home, she cried, fumbling with her saddle in her haste. Wade grasped her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. And we'll save what we can, but not by rushing in unprepared. 10 minutes later, they rode out with 6 armed ranch hands. The smoke was visible from miles away, a black column rising into the clear Montana sky. As they crested the final hill overlooking Sutton Land, Abigail's breath caught painfully in her throat. The small house was engulfed in flames, the barn already a smoldering ruin. Cattle and horses ran loose, panicked by the fire, and the men still visible on the property Thornton's hired guns, systematically destroying everything they found. No, she whispered, an anguished sound that made Wade's chest tighten. Mac, take Anderson and circle around the back. Johnson, you and Peters approach from the east. Wilson, with me and Miss Sutton. No one fires unless fired upon. The battle that followed was brief but vicious. Thornton's men, not expecting organized resistance, were caught off guard. 2 fell to Wade's men's rifles. 1 surrendered, and the rest fled toward Blackwater territory. But the victory felt hollow as Abigail stood before the ruins of her home, everything she owned reduced to ash and charred timber. Her face was blank with shock, her hands hanging limply at her sides. The house my father built, she said tonelessly. Everything. Gone. Wade dismissed his men to round up her scattered livestock, then approached her cautiously. Miss Sutton Abigail. I'm sorry. She didn't seem to hear him, moving forward to sift through the smoldering remains with bare hands until he pulled her back. You'll burn yourself, he said gently. I need to find, she broke off, her voice cracking. My mother's Bible. My father's pocket watch. They're all I had of them. Wade hesitated, then stripped off his leather gloves and handed them to her. Show me where to look. They searched until the sun was high overhead, finding only charred fragments of her former life. The Bible was ash, the watch a melted lump of metal. With each discovery, Abigail grew quieter, a dangerous stillness settling over her. By afternoon, her livestock had been gathered, fewer than before, but enough to start again. The question was where. You'll stay at Cowboy, Wade said as they prepared to leave the ruined homestead. Until you decide what's next. She turned to him, her face streaked with soot and dried tears. I know what's next. I'm going to rebuild. Right here. Abigail, this is my land, Mr. Kincaid. The only thing they can't take from me. Wade looked at the blackened earth, the monumental task ahead. They'll come back. Let them. He recognized the steel in her voice, the same determination that had kept her standing after her father's death, that had driven her to defend her water rights against larger forces. It was admirable, and likely to get her killed. At least stay at Cowboy while you rebuild, he said finally. My men can help with the construction. Pride warred in her expression. I can't pay them. Consider it an investment in keeping Blackwater at bay. When she still hesitated, he added, Please. Your father would want you safe while you recover what you've lost. The mention of her father seemed to reach her. She nodded once, sharply, and mounted her paint mare without another word. The next weeks fell into an unexpected rhythm. Abigail spent days at her property, clearing debris and planning the new structures with Wade's foreman. Evenings found her at Cowboy, initially quiet and withdrawn, but gradually emerging from her grief to join conversations over dinner. Wade found himself looking forward to these evenings, to her sharp observations and occasional smiles. He discovered she could play chess better than him and read Shakespeare with feeling. In turn, he showed her his prized horses, the irrigation system he'd designed, the orchard his mother had planted that now provided fruit for the entire ranch. You've built something remarkable here, she told him one evening as they walked back from the orchard, the first stars appearing overhead. We all built it. Every hand who's worked this land contributed something, and yet it bears your name. Kincaid. He glanced at her. Names matter out here. A good one opens doors. A bad one closes them. And what does Sutton mean now? The woman who lost everything to Blackwater. Wade stopped walking, turning to face her. It means the woman who refused to be driven off her land, who's rebuilding despite everything they threw at her. Something in his voice made her look up, really look at him. The weeks of shared purpose had changed them both, wearing away the wariness between them. Why haven't you married, Wade? She asked suddenly, using his first name for the first time. The question caught him off guard. Told you. Never found the time. That's not an answer. He sighed, resuming their walk. After the war, I wasn't whole. Took years before I could sleep through the night. Didn't seem fair to bring a woman into that. And now I've built a life that works. Change comes hard. Abigail was quiet for several steps. I understand that better than most. Construction on Abigail's new house progressed steadily through September. Wade split his time between ranch duties and helping with the rebuild, often working alongside her from sunup to sundown. They developed an easy rhythm, anticipating each other's needs without words. You two move like dance partners, Mac observed one afternoon as Wade handed Abigail a hammer before she'd even asked for it. The comment brought unexpected color to both their cheeks, and they worked in self-conscious silence for the rest of the day. That evening, a telegram arrived that changed everything again. The Cattlemen's Association had taken notice of Blackwater's aggression and was sending representatives to investigate. More importantly, a federal marshal would accompany them. This could be our chance, Wade told Abigail as they sat in his study reviewing the message. With federal authorities involved, Thornton can't simply bribe his way clear. Unless the marshal can be bought too, Abigail said, the months of hardship having left her skeptical of all authority. Not this one. I know him by reputation. Marcus Holloway fought for the Union. then made his name cleaning up mining towns in Colorado. They call him the Scale because he balances justice no matter who's on the other side. Hope flickered in Abigail's eyes for the first time since the fire. When do they arrive? 3 days. We need to prepare our case, gather witnesses, document everything Blackwater's done. They worked late into the night, compiling evidence and sending riders to neighboring ranches for statements. As the lamp burned low, Abigail found herself watching Wade, the intensity of his focus, the careful way he handled each piece of evidence, his unwavering commitment to seeing justice done. "Why are you doing all this?" she asked softly. "You could have made your own deal with Blackwater months ago. Saved yourself all this trouble." Wade looked up, shadows emphasizing the strong lines of his face. "Some things matter more than an easy path." "Like what?" "Like knowing I can face myself each morning. Like honoring what this land means not just as property, but as a promise." His eyes held hers. "Like helping someone who's fighting the same battle I am, just on a different scale." Something shifted between them in that moment, recognition deepening into something more complicated. "I should get some rest," Abigail said, suddenly aware of how alone they were, how intimate the lamplight made the study feel. Wade nodded, but as she reached the door, he said, "Abigail." She turned back. "I'm glad you're here. Not just for this fight." The simple honesty in his voice stayed with her long after she'd retired to her room. Marshal Holloway arrived with 2 representatives from the Cattlemen's Association, a court clerk, and enough legal authority to make Silas Thornton visibly nervous when they summoned him to Silverdale for a hearing. The town hall became an impromptu courthouse, with ranchers, miners, and curious townsfolk packing the space. Wade and Abigail presented their evidence methodically: the illegal damming of the creek, the destruction of her property, the intimidation of other small landholders. Witnesses came forward, some trembling with fear, but speaking nonetheless of Blackwater's tactics. Thornton's lawyer tried to dismiss it all as business disputes blown out of proportion, but Marshal Holloway was not easily swayed. "The law applies equally in territories as it does in states," he declared when the testimonies concluded. "Blackwater Mining Company has operated outside that law repeatedly. I'm issuing injunctions against further water diversion and seizure of lands. Additionally, Mr. Thornton, you'll face charges of arson and criminal destruction of property in federal court." The victory felt surreal to Abigail, who had grown so accustomed to fighting losing battles that winning seemed almost suspicious. As the crowd dispersed, she found herself standing beside Wade on the town hall steps, watching Thornton and his lawyer depart under the marshal's watchful eye. "Is it really over?" she asked quietly. Wade's hand found hers, a brief, supportive touch. "The worst of it. Blackwater will either reform or move on to easier targets. Either way, your land is secure now." Her land. The new house was nearly complete, the fences rebuilt, some livestock recovered. She could return home within days. The thought brought less joy than she'd expected. That evening, a celebration erupted at K Bar, ranch hands and neighboring farmers gathering to mark their victory. Abigail found herself the center of attention, receiving congratulations and sometimes tearful thanks from families who had also suffered under Blackwater's expansion. Wade watched her from across the yard, seeing how naturally she handled the attention with grace but without artifice. When their eyes met over the crowd, something wordless passed between them, and he found himself moving toward her as if pulled by an invisible thread. "Walk with me," he asked, offering his arm. They slipped away from the festivities, following a path that led to a small rise overlooking the ranch. The autumn night was cool, stars impossibly bright above the dark silhouettes of mountains. "Your house will be ready tomorrow," Wade said after they'd stood in companionable silence for several minutes. "Johnson's finishing the roof in the morning." "Yes," Abigail replied, a strange reluctance in her voice. "I should be glad to have my independence back." "Should be." She turned to face him, moonlight silvering her features. "These past weeks, they've been difficult, rebuilding from nothing, but they've also been." "Yes. I've never felt less alone," she admitted finally. "Even with all the loss, all the uncertainty, I felt like I was part of something. Something larger than just survival." Wade's heart quickened. "You are part of something, Abigail. This community, these people, they're yours now, as much as your land. And you?" The question was barely audible. What are you to me, Wade Kincaid? He took a step closer, close enough to see the flecks of amber in her brown eyes, the slight tremble of her lips. I could be more, he said, his voice rough with emotion he'd kept carefully contained until now. If you wanted. More than an ally? More than a neighbor? Everything. The word emerged with the force of long-held truth. I want to be everything to you, Abigail Sutton. Her breath caught. Are you proposing, Mr. Kincaid? Inelegantly, but yes. He took her hands in his. I know it's sudden. It's not sudden, she interrupted softly. It's been building since that first day at the creek, when you lowered your rifle and listened instead of shooting. Hope surged through him. Then, but I can't accept. The words hit him like a physical blow. I don't understand. Abigail's eyes glistened with unshed tears. Your proposal feels like mercy, Wade. Like you're rescuing the poor Sutton girl who lost everything. Understanding dawned, bittersweet. He remembered her words by the campfire months ago, about the neighbor whose proposal she'd rejected for the same reason. No, he said firmly. That's not what this is. Isn't it? You've given me shelter, helped rebuild my home, fought my battles, our battles, he corrected. And you've fought just as hard. Harder, with less to work with. He released her hands, but stepped closer, his gaze never leaving hers. This isn't mercy, Abigail. It's love wearing work clothes. She stilled, searching his face. What does that mean? It means love isn't poetry and roses out here. It's building a house together in the rain. It's standing back to back against common enemies. It's respect that grows deeper every day. His voice softened. It's not being able to imagine tomorrow without seeing your face. A tear slipped down her cheek, but she was smiling now. When did you know? When you stood in the ashes of your home and decided to rebuild instead of running. He brushed the tear away with his thumb. When did you know? When you handed me your gloves and helped me search for my parents' things. When you understood without words what they meant to me. Wade drew her closer, their foreheads nearly touching. I'm not asking you to give up your independence. Your land stays yours. But I'm offering partnership, not rescue. Partnership, she repeated, testing the word. I think I could learn to love that word almost as much as I've grown to love you. His heart soared at her admission. Is that a yes, Miss Sutton? It's a yes, Mr. Kincaid, she whispered, rising on tiptoes to bring her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, then deeper as months of unspoken feelings finally found expression. When they finally parted, both breathless, the celebration continued in the distance, unaware of the more personal joy unfolding on the hillside. What will people say? Abigail wondered, suddenly conscious of how quickly events had moved. Wade laughed softly. That the most stubborn woman and the most reserved man in the territory finally recognized what everyone else saw months ago. Were we that obvious? According to Mrs. Forrester, painfully so. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. She started airing out the master bedroom weeks ago, just in case. Abigail blushed, but couldn't help smiling. So much for my fearsome reputation. They returned to the celebration hand in hand, their changed relationship immediately apparent to everyone despite no formal announcement. Congratulations flowed as naturally as the cider being passed around, and Abigail found herself welcomed not as a neighbor in need, but as the future Mrs. Kincaid, a title that represented not surrender, but growth. The next day, they rode together to her newly rebuilt home. It stood solid and clean against the autumn landscape, smaller than the original but sturdier, with a covered porch and glass windows salvaged from an abandoned stage station. It's beautiful, she said, dismounting to run her hand along the fresh-cut timber of the porch rail. Better than before. Wade joined her, his arms slipping naturally around her waist. Like us. She leaned into him, savoring the moment. I still want to keep it my own place, my own name on the deed. I wouldn't have it any other way. Independence matters to us both. He pressed a kiss to her temple. But perhaps we could consider it a second home. A place for quiet when K-Bar gets too busy. Or a legacy for our children someday, she suggested, watching his expression carefully. The joy that bloomed on his face told her everything she needed to know about their future together. 3 months later, they married in the Silverdale Church, with half the county in attendance. Abigail wore her mother's lace collar, salvaged from a trunk that had survived the fire, and Wade wore the pocket watch his father had given him, newly engraved with both their initials. Marshal Holloway returned for the ceremony, bringing news that Blackwater Mining had been forced to restructure under federal oversight. Silas Thornton was serving time in a territorial prison, and the company's new management had agreed to fair water usage policies. As winter settled over Montana, bringing snow that blanketed the joined lands of Sutton and K-Bar in pristine white, Abigail and Wade found their rhythm together, sometimes passionate, sometimes companionable, always honest. They worked side by side through short days and spent long evenings planning spring plantings, cattle movements, and their shared future. "Do you ever regret it?" Wade asked one night as they lay tangled together before the hearth, the December wind howling outside. "Accepting my work clothes proposal?" Abigail propped herself up to look at him, her hair falling in a curtain around them. "Never. Because it wasn't mercy, it was recognition. You saw me, truly saw me, when others only saw land or water rights." He traced the line of her jaw with gentle fingers. "I see you more clearly every day. And I see the man behind the rancher's stern face," she teased. "The one who reads poetry by lamplight and leaves wildflowers on my pillow." "Don't tell the hands," he groaned. "I have a reputation to maintain." Her laughter filled their home, a sound that had once been rare but now came easily and often. Outside, Montana winter raged, but within the walls they'd built together both physical and emotional warmth and belonging flourished. In the spring, they would face new challenges, markets changing, neighbors coming and going, the territory evolving toward statehood. But they would face them together, their love no longer disguised in work clothes but worn openly, a partnership forged in fire and built to last through whatever the frontier might bring.